由于前段时间呢，印度的银学在全世界不断的闹笑话之后啊，其实印度的很多精英也开始有些反省了。这一次呢，一个主持人就去采访了在华为工作的印度人，想要了解一下，那中国人和印度人到底有什么不同呢？从这次的采访当中，我们终于可以发现了，印度人对于中国人真的有深深的误解，甚至他还有一些藐视，他甚至觉得说中国人的思维太古板了，太僵化了，不知道是怎么想的。可是啊，真正在外面见过世面的人，那个不管是中国人还是印度人，只要见过世面，他就知道真正的差距在哪里了。我们来欣赏一下。
I joined this company called Huawei. And Huawei gave me a lot of exposure. I was there with Huawei for 3 years.
You went to China?
Yeah.
Stayed in China?
Yeah, I was in China for a year. And I was in Brazil for a year with Huawei. And Indonesia. Indonesia I had visited, traveled for work in my previous stint. But I was in Indonesia for almost 6 to 9 months.
In your phase in China, you realized how much importance is given to work, longer work hours, extreme hustle mentality. The Chinese go to war for the sake of their work.
Yeah.
Downside is possibly mental health issues, kind of boxed thinking, which you see often with Chinese people all over the world.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to add about China?
No, I think that summarizes that pretty well in terms of what is required to be done. And then also I think the mentality that China at that time, when I joined Huawei, 2008, China wasn't what it is today. Like China is almost practically a superpower today, right? After US. It wasn't the same today. So they were very clear in their mindset that they have to work hard to get to what they need to get to. That's what I liked about the country and the folks in there. Like it was very, very mission and purpose driven. They knew that they're not born with a silver spoon. They'll have to work hard to get to where they need to get to. And that was my learning, right? Wartime mentality, I learned that from there. But also I think this mindset that like we'll have to work extra hard to get to where we need to, because otherwise other countries will take over. So that call it fire, call it
Virat Kohli mentality.
Yeah. I mean, you have to work extra hard to get to where you need to. You can't be comfortable saying, oh, we are just take it for granted, saying, oh, anyways, we're going to be the manufacturing hub of the world, so we don't need to do anything and we'll just make it.
I think this is what Indians need to understand about the Chinese, that it's a country full of different caliber Virat Kohlis in terms of mentality. That's what they're boxed into.
Sure.
At least this is what I've heard generally.
Yeah, I've seen less of creative side there, more of execution side there. They're very good at execution. They will out-execute you. Like if you're competing with the Chinese, you can count on the fact that they will out-execute you.
What is out-execute?
Meaning,
Just put in more hours.
More hours, do it better than you, like the actual execution, right? Do it better than you in terms of execution. Like for example, manufacturing, that's why it's called a manufacturing hub or the capital of the world, right? Because there is focus on precision and making sure, like even Apple manufactures in China.
Let's go one layer deep. Why are they able to execute better?
One is the number of hours. Second is sincerity and dedication. Like they dedicate to the art of whatever they're doing. So for example, I've even gone into Huawei's manufacturing. Huawei had a lot of phone manufacturing, chip manufacturing, router manufacturing, all physical equipment manufacturing. Right? So I've gone inside and checked that out. And what you see there is like the people are not wondering when is my lunch break, right? When is my tea break? When is my next break? What have you, right? There's no time for gossip, chit chat, nothing. When they're working, they're just working, right? And that to me is like fascinating. So they're not even bothered about who's coming watching us. Like we would go as visitors, walking around the manufacturing setup. Nobody cares. You're doing your job, I'm doing mine. They're focused on their thing and they do it like a religion.
Okay, maybe the answer that I was looking for is what's in the education system that's making them this way. Because everyone goes through the education system, I think the whole country is literate.
I would not say a lot of these folks are like, engineer educated sort of levels.
At least 12th standard.
Yeah. Most folks are, but tier 2, tier 3 maybe not.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are a lot of poor places in China also.
But then, okay, at least tier 1, which is possibly driving the growth of the country.
Sure.
What's going so correct in the education system that we don't have? Because even we have tier 1 populations here which are pretty capable, but there's something that we're f***ing up. So correct in the education system that we don't have. Because even we have tier 1 populations here which are pretty capable, but there's something that we're f***ing up. compared to them?
That's a good question. I mean, I have not thought about it from that perspective, but I think one of the things is in India, I think especially India, I mean, I can compare it with India, and I maybe will come back to US and talk about US a bit as well. I think in India, we have this tendency, and this can be controversial.
Say it.
Yeah, we have this tendency to sort of overthink and over-question everything. Right? Like we don't trust the process. In China, that's not the case. They trust the process. That's what I've seen. I think that's the major difference between Indian culture and Chinese culture.
They believe in doing.
Yeah, let's do it and let's not keep questioning everything. Let's not keep second guessing. Am I going to get this output? Let me do my part the most. Let me not worry about the result and the outcome.
Okay, one layer deep. Maybe it's because in India we fear shame as an emotion.
Shame or failure?
I mean, shame as an outcome of failure. That's what I was going for. Like, it basically boils down to gossip culture in India, that what will people say with, and it is a thing.
The social pressure from failures. I think that's how I would, I mean, even I had that when I was doing my Momo thing. I wasn't too sure if I should tell everybody because I'm doing a Momo thing after being an engineer and I was a computer science grad. So with that background, I also had that during that time.
So probably this overthinking, which is the problem for India, is an outcome of the fear of shame.
Possible. Like I felt that during my times when I was doing my Momo thing. I would not go and tell everybody at that point.
And maybe in China, failure is not looked down upon as much.
They don't worry about the outcome so much. So even if there is failure or success, they don't worry about the outcome. Have I put in my 100% to the best of my abilities? That's the focus. That is a clear cultural difference.
In terms of macro strategy, like the leaders at the top, I am assuming they would be cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
But is anything different in Chinese leaders versus Indian leaders?
I think the wartime mentality is for sure. Like they're not worried about taking on the big shots in the market. Like if you're not a market leader, they're not worried about taking on somebody larger, right? So that underdog mindset is a very different mindset as from leadership perspective. You got to be aware that you are an underdog, which means you don't have all the luxuries of what a larger competitor has. They may have more employees, they may have more money, they have a bigger brand, they have more customers. In spite of not having all of that, how do you go compete with them? And be prepared to get your backside kicked, right? So that I've seen for sure in leadership there. I'm not saying we don't have that in India. There are good leaders who are doing that in India now, especially the new set of folks. But I think it's a more like there's a larger set of leaders I've seen in China who come with that mindset. They're not too worried about like, what if I am not able to get to my outcome? Like, I think Elon says it very well, right? I think Joe Rogan or Lex Friedman was asking him this question in one of his podcasts. Like, what's your plan B or plan C if plan A doesn't work? And he says, I don't think like that, right? Like, for me, like once I decide something needs to be done, it needs to be done, right? Till death. I think that's the mindset there in China.
Versus what do you see in Bangalore or Mumbai?
Like, what's your plan B or plan C if plan A doesn't work? And he says, I don't think like that, right? Like, for me, like once I decide something needs to be done, it needs to be done, right? Till death. I think that's the mindset there in China.
Versus what do you see in Bangalore or Mumbai or Gurgaon?
I think too many people have plan Bs and plan Cs. Too many plan Bs and plan Cs. And then always second guessing your outcome. Oh, like time boxing it. And we are also taught from this culturally from childhood. Cut your losses, have a timeline, right? Move on. And in a lot of cases, that's not a bad thing. But I also feel like from my own experiences in life, would I have done better if I was always not second guessing myself? I absolutely think so.
What's life like in China? Just daily life. It's a lot of work, obviously, long work hours.
Yeah. Like long work hours. I mean, I'm a tea connoisseur, so I love the China culture in terms of tea and health, and there's a lot of natural stuff, natural eating. They don't overcook food. So from that perspective, yes. And then from work perspective, very focused. Come in, put in your hours. If get your work done, and then go home and I mean, enjoy or not enjoy is questionable.
Yeah, this is what I want to know. Because I feel like career growth is an outcome of what you do in your free time as well. So what do Chinese people do in their free time?
I don't think people have a lot of second careers or other things they think. At least when I was there, I did not see that. Maybe times have changed now with all the influencer culture and a lot of other alternative live streams or money streams coming in. Maybe that's changed now, but when I was there, it was single threaded, right? Like people would just have one single thread focus and just do that. And they were happy with that. People were not complaining. Like my colleagues, I was not like a CEO of Huawei, right? So I was at a very middle management below that level. So there you know the reality. The ground check was people were happy doing what they were doing. Nobody complained, nobody cribbed. People happy doing what they did.
They vibe with Indians?
Yeah. You also end up learning a little bit of Mandarin, right? I learned to count from 1 to 100 because then you can negotiate to buy stuff, right? So I learned a little bit of Mandarin there. But yeah, very cool.
What conversations do you have with a regular Chinese person?
It's just exchanging. I think there is a solid bond between Indian and Chinese culture. Like there's that strength of bond with family. So that's a common thread. They do a lot of family dinners usually, right? Hot pot, Chinese hot pot. They would have a pot of stuff to eat and the whole family would get together. Sundays are usually that.
Aren't you vegetarian?
Yeah, I am.
So how did you manage being
vegetarian? Hot pots are also there.
You get vegetarian food there?
Yeah. Okay, so you have to be a little careful in terms of what they call vegetarian. For them, a lot of things are also like non-vegetarian is also vegetarian. But once you've stayed there enough, you know exactly what to ask for.
Did that whole phase add value to your career?
100%.
Biggest value was mentality,
mindset, and then I think. So I'll go back to my third venture, the Momo piece, right? So my first two ventures, now that I reflect back, the first two ventures, I was not fully in, meaning I always had, if those didn't work out, I could always go do something else. With my first startup, I could go get my engineering degree, which I did. My second startup, I just did it before my first job. So if that didn't work out, I could go get my first job. So what I realized with my Momo thing was I was all in. I quit my job in the States, came back, and then did my venture. I was all in. So it's almost like when you're learning to ride a bike, you have those 2 tires or whatever it's on the side. You know you will not fall. You really don't learn to bike then, right? Like you really learn to bike when you take those off. That's what happened here.
其实，在硅谷，基本上高管都是印度人，很少看到中国人。这个可能也是某一些印度人感觉到特别骄傲和自豪的地方啊！就算你去搜索说 Google 的 CEO， 你搜出来竟然是一个印度人，对吧？的确，印度会有一些精英啊，他们在全世界范围内，特别是 IT 圈里面是有一些位置在。可是印度很大的一个问题在哪儿呢？它的割裂太严重了啊！只有那么一小部分的精英是可以在全世界里面啊来回走的。可是这一类人呢，他不是很赞同印度的文化的啊，印度的所有的文化其实它没有达到一个统一，也就是说，你根本就没有办法用统一的价值观去让所有的人都围绕着一件事情去努力去发展，各种各样的宗教，各种各样的种姓制度，让印度在这个生存环境里面看不到事物的本质。好，今天的节目我们就聊到这里，点个订阅，我们下次再聊。